The scent hit me first. Cedarwood and gunpowder. A smell I hadn't breathed in 5 years, but one my Omega instincts recognized instantly. My hands froze over the sink, soapy water dripping from trembling fingers. Not here. Not now. Behind me, my triplets laughed in the living room, their innocent voices like bells in the storm I could feel brewing. I pressed my palms against the counter, forcing myself to breathe. He can't be here. He doesn't know where we are. But Omegas always know their alpha. And right now, every cell in my body screamed that Taemin was close. 3 days earlier, Appa, the sandcastle's done. I looked up from my weathered novel to see Minjun, my eldest by 3 minutes, standing proudly beside a lopsided tower of sand. His brothers, Jehun and Subin, splashed in the shallow waves nearby, their laughter carrying on the salt-tinged breeze. "Beautiful, baby," I called back, tucking a strand of dark hair behind my ear. The afternoon sun felt warm on my skin, gentle, safe. Everything Taemin's world had never been. This coastal town had become our sanctuary. Population barely 3,000. One main street. A fish market where everyone knew everyone. Mrs. Park at the corner store always slipped extra candy into the boys' bags. Mr. Choi taught them to tie fishing knots on slow Sunday mornings. This is enough, I told myself for the 1,000th time. We're happy here. Appa, why don't we have another parent like Yoonji does? Subin asked that night as I tucked them into their shared bedroom. His round eyes, so heartbreakingly like Taemin's, stared up at me with innocent curiosity. My chest tightened. You have me. Isn't that enough? It is. Minjun jumped in quickly, always the protective one. Appa's the best. Jehun, my quiet observer, just watched me with that knowing look he sometimes got. Too perceptive for 5 years old. I kissed each of their foreheads, breathing in their clean, sweet scent, milk and honey, with just a hint of my Omega pheromones. Sleep now, my stars. But sleep didn't come easily for me that night. It never did when they asked about their father. The first sign came on a Tuesday. I was closing up the small bookshop where I worked when I noticed the black sedan. Sleek, expensive, completely out of place in our town of rusty pickup trucks and sun-faded vans. It idled across the street, windows tinted dark. My heart hammered. You're paranoid, I told myself. Not every black car means danger. But I'd spent 2 years with Taemin. I knew what danger looked like. I picked up the boys from Mrs. Kim's house and walked the long way home, checking over my shoulder. The sedan was gone. I exhaled slowly, unlocking our small blue cottage with shaking hands. Appa, you're squeezing too hard, Jehun murmured. I loosened my grip on his hand, forcing a smile. Sorry, baby. That night, I pulled out the burner phone from my hidden emergency bag. The one I'd sworn I'd never need. My thumb hovered over the only number saved in it, a contact who'd helped me disappear 5 years ago. Not yet, I decided. Maybe I'm wrong. But the feeling didn't leave. Thursday morning, a stranger came into the bookshop. Tall, sharp suit, eyes that scanned everything like he was cataloging exits. His scent was all wrong, alpha, aggressive, nothing like the gentle fishermen and retirees who usually browsed our shelves. Can I help you? I kept my voice steady, Omega instincts screaming to submit, to lower my eyes. I did neither. Just looking. His gaze lingered on me too long before he left without buying anything. I called in sick the next day. Kept the boys home from their playgroup. We spent Friday huddled in the cottage, curtains drawn, while I tried to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. Appa's acting weird, I heard Minjun whisper to his brothers. He wasn't wrong. Saturday evening I was making dinner, spicy ramen, the boys' favorite, when Subin screamed from the living room. I dropped the ladle and ran. What happened? He pointed at the window, tears streaming. There was a man. He was looking at us. My blood turned to ice. I rushed to the window, but saw nothing except our quiet street bathed in twilight shadows. The neighbors' lights flickered on. A cat prowled across Mrs. Han's yard. Probably just a shadow, baby, I soothed, pulling him close even as my hands shook. You're safe. Appa's here. But I wasn't safe. We weren't safe. That night, after the boys finally slept, I packed our emergency bags. Clothes, documents, cash. The same bags I'd kept ready for 5 years but hoped I'd never touch. We'll leave tomorrow, I decided. Start over again somewhere new. I should have left that night. Sunday morning arrived too bright, too normal. The boys begged for pancakes. I made them, muscle memory taking over while my mind raced with escape plans. Ferry to the mainland. Bus to Seoul. Disappear into the crowds. The knock on the door stopped my heart. 3 sharp raps. From deliberate. Stay here, I whispered to the boys, moving toward the door like I was walking to my execution. Through the peephole I saw him. 5 years older. Shoulders broader. Face harder, carved by violence and power. But those eyes, dark, intense, burning, were exactly the same. Taemin stood on my doorstep like a king surveying conquered territory. Our eyes met through the peephole, and somehow, impossibly, I knew he could sense me there. The mate bond I'd thought I'd severed flared to life, painful and electric. Haneul, he said quietly. His voice rumbled through the door, through my chest, through 5 years of carefully built walls. I know you're there. We need to talk. Behind me, Minjun called out, Appa? Who is it? Taemin's expression changed, confusion, then shock, then something fierce and possessive that made my Omega instincts sing and my rational mind scream. Haneul. His voice dropped to something dangerous. Open the door. Now. My hand reached for the lock before I could stop myself. Damn the mate bond. Damn him. Damn me for never being able to truly run. The door opened, and with it, the life I'd built crumbled to dust. The door swung open, and reality tilted. Taemin stood there in a black suit that probably cost more than my yearly rent, looking at me like I was a ghost he'd been hunting. Behind me, I heard the soft patter of small feet. Appa. Minjun's voice, curious and cautious. Taemin's gaze shifted past my shoulder. I watched his face transform, confusion melting into shock, shock hardening into something raw and overwhelming. His alpha scent spiked, cedar and gunpowder mixing with barely controlled rage. Inside. Now. I grabbed his arm, yanking him through the doorway before the neighbors could see. His skin burned against my palm, the mate bond crackling to life like a live wire. The moment he stepped fully into our small living room, all 3 boys froze. They stared at this strange alpha invading their safe space, instinctively moving closer together. Taemin stared back. His hands clenched at his sides, and I saw his throat work as he swallowed hard. How old are they? None of your business. My voice shook despite my best effort to sound strong. How? Haneul. 5, Jehun answered quietly, because of course my observant middle child would sense this moment mattered. We just turned 5 last month. I watched the math click in Taemin's head. Watched the color drain from his face before flooding back as crimson rage. When his eyes met mine, I saw barely leashed violence there. Boys, go to your room, I said quickly. But Appa. Please. They obeyed, but not before Minjun shot Taemin a protective glare that was so fierce, so achingly familiar, it made my chest hurt. They had their father's eyes, all 3 of them. The moment their door clicked shut, Taemin moved. Predatory. He had me backed against the wall before I could breathe, his forearm pressed across my collarbones. Not hurting, never hurting, but trapping. 5 years. His voice was deadly quiet. You kept my children from me for 5 years. They're my children. You lost that right when I what? He leaned closer, and my Omega instincts screamed at the proximity to our alpha. When I loved you. Protected you? When I would have burned the world down for you? When you killed for a living? The words exploded out of me. When you came home covered in blood and expected me to just accept it? When your enemies sent you that video, my voice cracked. The one showing what they'd do to me if they caught me. What they'd do to any children we had. Taemin's expression flickered. I eliminated that threat. You eliminated that one. But there would always be another, and then I was pregnant. I pressed my hands against his chest, feeling his heart racing as fast as mine. I couldn't raise our babies in that world. I couldn't watch them become targets. So you ran. His jaw clenched. You made me think you were dead, Haneul. Do you understand? For 6 months, I thought you were dead. The pain in his voice cut deeper than any knife. I'd known my disappearance would hurt him, but I'd convinced myself it was necessary. That he'd move on. I had to protect them, I whispered. From me. The betrayal in those words made my Omega whine. From your world. There's a difference. A sound from the bedroom, Subin's quiet crying. Both our heads turned toward it, parental instinct overriding everything else. I should go to him, I said. Taemin stepped back, and I hated how cold I felt without him close. I moved toward the bedroom, but his voice stopped me. What are their names? I hesitated. Giving him this felt like giving him power. But those were his children behind that door, whether I liked it or not. Minjun. Jihun. Subin. He repeated each name slowly, like a prayer or a vow. I want to meet them properly. Taemin. I'm not asking, Haneul. The Mafia boss voice, the one that commanded empires. You've had 5 years. I'm owed 5 minutes. Watching Taemin interact with our sons was torture. He sat on our worn couch, looking ridiculously out of place in his expensive suit, while 3 identical pairs of dark eyes studied him with fascination and suspicion. You're an alpha, Minjun said finally. Not a question. I am. Are you here to hurt Appa? The protective edge in my baby's voice made my heart clench. No. Taemin's expression softened in a way I'd never seen before. I could never hurt your Appa. I love him. You left us. Subin accused, tears still wet on his cheeks. I didn't know you existed, little one. If I had... He looked at me then, and the intensity made my breath catch. Nothing could have kept me away. Jihun, ever the observer, tilted his head. You smell like Appa. Different, but the same. That's because your Appa is my mate. What's a mate? Subin asked. Before I could intervene, Taemin answered with surprising gentleness. It means we're supposed to be together. Forever. But Appa says forever is a fairy tale, Minjun challenged. Taemin's eyes found mine again. Maybe your Appa stopped believing in fairy tales. But that doesn't make them less real. That night, after the boys finally slept, Taemin and I sat at my small kitchen table like strangers. He'd sent his men away, there had been 3 of them watching the house, and now it was just us and 5 years of silence. I'm not going back, I said firmly. And neither are they. We'll discuss that. There's nothing to discuss. He pulled out his phone, pressed a button, and slid it across the table. A video played, grainy security footage of my bookshop. The stranger who'd visited. But the angle showed what I hadn't seen, him taking photos of me. Making a phone call. That was 2 days ago, Taemin said quietly. This was yesterday. Another video. The same man meeting with someone I recognized from news reports, Kim Jihun, one of Seoul's rising crime lords. Money changing hands. My blood ran cold. What does this mean? It means they know where you are. It means someone put a bounty on you, on any Omega connected to me. His hands clenched on the table. It means the threat you ran from 5 years ago never disappeared. It evolved. You're lying. You just want. The window shattered. Glass exploded inward as something metal crashed through, hitting the floor with a heavy thunk. Taemin moved faster than thought, grabbing me and throwing us both to the ground as the smoke grenade detonated. The boys! I screamed. Taemin was already moving, but the front door burst open. Men in black masks flooded in, 3, 4, 5 of them. Taemin took down the first 2 with brutal efficiency, but I was already running for the bedroom. A hand grabbed my hair, yanking me back. I cried out, and Taemin's roar of rage was purely alpha, purely primal. Then I heard it. The sound that stopped my heart. Minjun screaming, "Get away from us!" Someone had gotten to the bedroom. Time slowed. Taemin broke the neck of the man holding me. I stumbled forward, vision blurring from tears and smoke. The bedroom door hung open and inside. A masked man held Subin, a knife to his throat. My baby's eyes were wide with terror. "Nobody move," the man said in accented Korean. "Or the pup dies." Behind him, through the window, I saw more men approaching. Taemin appeared beside me, blood on his knuckles, death in his eyes. But even he froze at the sight of that blade against our son's skin. "You have something Kim Ji-hoon wants," the man continued. "Come quietly, Omega, and the children live." My legs nearly gave out. This was it. The nightmare I'd run from. The reason I'd hidden for 5 years. I looked at Taemin. Saw my own terror reflected in his face. "I'll go," I whispered. "Just don't hurt them." "Like hell," Taemin growled. The man's blade pressed harder. Subin whimpered. And then Ji-hoon, my quiet, clever boy, bit down hard on the man's arm while Minjun grabbed the lamp and swung it at his knee. In that split second of chaos, Taemin moved. What happened next was violence I tried to forget he was capable of. Fast, brutal, final. But his body always shielded the boys from seeing. From knowing. When silence fell, he was holding all 3 of them, blood on his suit, their small bodies tucked against him like they were the most precious things in existence. "We're leaving," he said, looking at me with something between command and plea. "Tonight. Together. No more running, Haneul. Not from me. Not from this." Outside, sirens wailed. More of Taemin's men arrived, the real ones, not enemies in disguise. I looked at my shaking sons. At the shattered window. At 5 years of peace destroyed in minutes. "Okay," I breathed. "Okay." 'Cause he was right. The fairy tale was over. Now came the war. Taemin's penthouse felt like a gilded cage. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Seoul's glittering skyline. Marble floors. Leather furniture that probably cost more than my cottage. Guards at every entrance. Safe, he'd promised. A fortress. I hated every inch of it. "Appa, can we go outside?" Subin asked for the 10th time that week, pressing his nose against the glass. "Not yet, baby." The words tasted like ash. 2 weeks. 14 days since the attack. Since Taemin had bundled us into armored cars and brought us here, to the heart of his empire. The boys adapted with frightening ease. Minjun loved the fancy game room. Ji-hoon obsessed over the massive library. But Subin grew quieter each day, and it terrified me. Taemin appeared in the doorway like he always did, silent, commanding. Still in his work suit? "Bedtime," he said gently, and my traitorous heart fluttered at how naturally he'd slipped into fatherhood. "Will you read to us?" Ji-hoon asked, already holding up a book. "Always." I watched from the doorway as he settled on their massive shared bed, 3 small bodies curling against him like he'd always been there. His deep voice rumbled through a story about dragons and princes, and the yearning in my chest grew sharp enough to cut. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to feel safe with him. Wasn't supposed to watch him braid Subin's hair or teach Minjun chess or listen patiently to Ji-hoon's endless questions and feel my walls crumbling. "You're staring," Taemin murmured after the boys finally slept. We stood in the hallway, careful distance between us. I'm remembering why I left. His jaw tightened. "Because I was good at violence? Because you enjoyed it." I crossed my arms, armor against the mate bond pulling me toward him. "Because you'd come home smiling after breaking someone's bones." I smiled because I was coming home to you. He stepped closer. "Every dark thing I did was to build a world where you'd be safe. Protected." "Protected?" I laughed bitterly. "We just got attacked because of you." "No." His eyes flashed. "You got attacked because you ran. Because you weren't under my protection when Kim Ji-hoon started his war." "So this is my fault?" This is 5 years of miscommunication finally exploding. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion showing through the cracks. "I've eliminated 3 of Ji-hoon's operations this week. For more targeted. He'll be handled soon." And then what? Another enemy rises? Another threat? I shook my head. "This never ends, Taemin." "It does if I end it permanently." The cold finality in his voice chilled me. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm dismantling the entire network. Restructuring. Focusing on legitimate business." He caught my wrist, thumb pressing against my racing pulse. If that's what it takes. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. You can't just stop being who you are. Watch me. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. Taemin started coming home earlier. Trade meetings in the living room while the boys did homework. Phone calls conducted in English and Japanese, business, but legal. I watched him transform from Mafia king to something else. Something almost domestic. Appa's Alpha brings the best snacks, Minjun declared one evening, mouth full of expensive chocolates. He's not? I caught Taemin's raised eyebrow. Your father. Just call him that. Father's too formal, Jihun observed. What about Papa? The hope in Taemin's expression broke something in me. Whatever you want, I whispered. That night, tucking them in together felt natural. Dangerous. Like falling into old patterns I'd sworn to resist. Do you love Papa? Subin asked suddenly, those two knowing eyes pinning me. Taemin had frozen in the doorway. I felt his presence like heat against my back. It's complicated, baby. That means yes, Jihun translated wisely. Sleep, I ordered, fleeing before they could see my face burn. Taemin caught me in the hallway. We stood inches apart, the mate bond screaming, my Omega instincts begging me to submit, to let him close, to... I never stopped, he said quietly. Loving you. Even when I thought you were dead. Even when I was furious. Not for a single moment. Taemin. My voice broke on his name. You don't have to say it back. Just don't push me away. His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. Let me prove I can change. That I can be what you need. I should have said no. Should have maintained distance. Instead, I leaned into his touch, 5 years of loneliness crashing over me. One chance. If anything happens to them, it won't. I swear on my life. He pressed his forehead to mine, and the mate bond sang. They're everything, Haneul. You're everything. 3 days later, the illusion shattered. I woke to shouting. Taemin was in his office, door half open, voice sharp with command. I crept closer, still in pajamas, and heard the words that stopped my heart. Don't care about the consequences. Kim Jihun took something of mine. I take everything of his. Burn it all. Silence then, yes, including the club. I know there are civilians inside. Acceptable casualties. My blood turned to ice. He emerged to find me standing there, horror written across my face. Haneul. You said you'd changed. My voice shook. You promised. This is different. He sent assassins to our home. So you'll kill innocent people? I backed away. How many, Taemin? 20? How many deaths to balance the scales? However many it takes to keep you safe. Don't you dare use us as an excuse. Tears burned hot. This is who you are. Who you'll always be. I'm protecting my family. By becoming a monster? The word hung between us like a blade. Behind us, a small voice. Papa! We turned. All the boys stood there, woken by the noise. Minjun's face was pale. Jihun looked confused. Subin was crying. Are you and Appa fighting? Subin whispered. Taemin looked between us and the boys, something breaking in his expression. No, we're just... An explosion rocked the building. The windows shattered inward. Taemin grabbed the boys as I hit the floor, ears ringing. Smoke poured through the broken glass. Alarms screamed. Move! Taemin roared, and suddenly we were running. Guards appeared, forming a protective circle. More explosions below, systematic, planned. Someone was destroying the building floor by floor. Service elevator, Taemin commanded, carrying Jihun while his men grabbed Minjun and Subin. I stumbled behind them, barefoot on broken glass. We burst into the stairwell. Down, always down. My lungs burned. The boys were crying. Then gunfire erupted above us. They're in the building, one guard shouted. Taemin's face became stone. He thrust Jihun at me. Get them to the garage. Level B3. Black SUV, keys under the seat. Drive to the harbor safe house. I'm not leaving you. You are. He gripped my shoulders. Because I can't fight knowing you're in danger. Please, Haneul. Above us, the shooting got closer. I looked at my sons, terrified and small. Looked at Taemin, bleeding from a glass cut but standing like a shield between us and death. Don't die, I breathed. His smile was sad. I'll always find you. Then he was gone, moving toward the gunfire with his remaining men. I ran with the boys, my feet leaving bloody prints, their crying echoing in the concrete stairwell. We burst into the garage. Found the SUV. My hands shook so badly I couldn't turn the key. Where's Papa? Minjun sobbed. He's coming, I lied, peeling out into the night. Behind us, Taemin's fortress burned. The safe house was a warehouse by the docks, cold, empty, smelling of salt and rust. I barricaded the door with my shaking hands while the boys huddled on a dusty couch, wrapped in blankets I'd found. No word from Taemin. 3 hours of silence that felt like dying slowly. Is Papa dead? Jihun asked quietly. No. I forced certainty into my voice. He's strong. He'll come. But I'd seen the explosions. Heard the gunfire. Watched his building burn in the rearview mirror. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered with my heart in my throat. Haneul. Not Taemin's voice. Older. Amused. I believe you have something of mine. Who is this? Kim Jihun. And you've caused me considerable trouble. The pause. But I'm a reasonable man. Bring me Han Taemin's sons and I'll let you live. Ice flooded my veins. Never. Then I'll take them. And when I'm done with those pups, I'll make sure Taemin watches before I kill him too. The call ended. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. They knew where we were. Of course they did. Taemin's safe house would be on every enemy's radar. Appa. Minjun's voice was small. What do we do? I looked at my 3 babies, exhausted and scared. Looked at the single exit. At my bleeding feet and empty hands. Then I remembered who I was before Taemin. Before motherhood. Before fear. I'd been Omega to a Mafia king. I'd learned things. Survived things. We fight, I said quietly. Come on. I found weapons in a locked cabinet, Taemin's emergency stash. A gun I barely knew how to use. Bear spray. I armed myself clumsily while the boys watched with wide eyes. Minjun, you're in charge. There's a panic room behind that bookshelf. I showed them the hidden switch. Lock yourselves in. Don't come out for anyone but me or your papa. What about you? Subin clung to my leg. I'll keep you safe. I kissed each of their heads, breathing in their scent. I love you. So much. Now go. They disappeared behind the shelf just as I heard it. Engines outside. Multiple vehicles. I steadied my shaking hands around the gun. For them. Everything for them. The door exploded inward. Men poured through, 5, 6, too many. I fired wildly, the recoil shocking through my arms. One man went down. Another. Then someone tackled me and the gun skittered away. Hands grabbed me. Yanked me up. A fist connected with my face and the world tilted. Where are the brats? A man with a scarred face shook me. Gone, I spat blood. You'll never find them. He smiled. We have all night to make you talk. The knife came out. Then the skylight shattered. Taemin dropped through like an avenging angel, glass raining around him. He landed in a crouch, gun in each hand, and the warehouse became a slaughterhouse. I'd forgotten how beautiful he was in violence. How precise. Each shot found a target. Each movement flowed into the next. He moved through them like death incarnate, and when the last body hit the floor, he stood there breathing hard, covered in blood, eyes wild. Our gazes locked. The boys? His voice was raw. Safe. Panic room. Relief crashed over his features. Then he saw my face, swelling, bleeding, and rage replaced everything else. Who touched you? Taemin, it doesn't. Who? I pointed at the scarred man groaning on the floor. Taemin crossed to him in 3 strides, grabbed him by the throat, and lifted him one-handed. You put your hands on my mate. His voice was arctic. On the mother of my children. Please, the man choked. Wrong answer. The snap echoed through the warehouse. Taemin dropped him and turned to me, and suddenly he wasn't the monster anymore. He was just a man, terrified and broken, reaching for me with shaking hands. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. You were right. I am a monster. I can't change. I can't be what you need." I kissed him. Fierce and desperate, tasting blood and smoke and 5 years of running. His arms came around me, crushing me close, and the mate bond blazed to life so strong it hurt. "You came," I breathed against his mouth. "You're alive. Always." He pressed his forehead to mine. "Always for you. For them. I was wrong too." Tears streamed down my face. "You're not a monster. You're a man doing monstrous things to protect what he loves." And my voice broke. "I never stopped loving you either." His kiss was gentler this time. Reverent. Like I was something precious he'd thought he'd lost forever. A small voice interrupted. "Does this mean you're not fighting anymore?" We broke apart to find 3 small faces peering around the bookshelf. Minjun looked relieved. Jehun was smiling. Subin was already running toward us. Taemin caught him mid-leap, then gathered all 3 boys close while reaching for me. We stood there in that bloody warehouse, a family finally whole, and for the first time in 5 years, I let myself believe in forever. 6 months later. "Appa! Papa! Come see!" I looked up from my book to see Minjun waving frantically from the beach. Our beach now, the coastal house Taemin had bought, far from Seoul's chaos. He'd kept his promise. Dismantled the violent operations. Shifted to legitimate business. Some enemies remained, but with allies now, former rivals who'd united when Taemin took down Kim Jehun. Taemin appeared beside me, shirt unbuttoned, hair messy from the wind. So different from the cold Mafia boss I'd fled from. "They found a starfish," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. Think they'll want to keep it?" "Absolutely." His hand found mine, fingers interlacing. "Is this enough? This life?" I looked at our boys splashing in the waves. At the simple house behind us. At the man who'd burned down his empire to build something better. "It's everything," I whispered. He pulled me close, and I felt his smile against my hair. "But, because I'm never letting you run again. Promise. On my life. On theirs. On us." He tilted my chin up, eyes soft with the kind of love that rewrites destinies. "Forever, Haneul. Like I always promised." I kissed him as the sun set over our ocean, our children's laughter carrying on the wind. Some fairy tales ended in castles. Ours ended in peace. And that was more than enough. The end.